Hello. Hello, species value nature system. This is another install. No, this is serious. There are people with Hartford Hospital, with our Wethersfield Police, and with intercity police through time, EMS, military corruption, and in relationship to a database relationship and crime method, and evidence is a crime method, the sequence shifting crime method that is juxtaposed both formal with the branches, and evidence is still attaching innocent people and victims to the real causes of negative value nature progressions is the worst. What's really been facilitating the juxtaposed insidiousness with interdation criminal enterprises. This is by original fact treatment breaching method against fact treat all ages of fact treatment nature, all states of it do, individually, distinctly, and together, the same way, to all areas. There's only letting victim predators let manifest per method to this, originally forced with the areas that originally built a misprision criminality. And this is of fact treatment nature styles that are abridged. That is the Constitution, which the surface values of the Constitution abridged, which was still forced, where we were forced to start with them hiding who they were and just leaving that for common sense to get through what we haven't got through yet, to freedom. Well, that's still abridged, still fake, states' roles with original and state criminal internation persuasions, legalized. So still, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police foreman, I'm not a criminal, I'm not a military. We're going to examine how English was revealed to teach every science. The ratiocination is an identity of the sciences shared, just like all parts of our body share one. And we'll see how each of the sciences were and are obfuscated per method, exploiting ancient revelations as an organized crime method against fact treatment nature. You can't measure what runs this by wealth either, and you can't, the nature of wealth too come into this, and we can't even have this conversation because they have areas with top-down states and as bottom-up too, pushing with the top-down forced Marxist positions, the same fact treatment nature styles needed to hide lies, delusions, premises, criminal nation persuasions, delusions, all abridged. The justifications of that are breaching nature. Justifications of that are tied to a nature stuck as retreat nature, which is not just words. Was a stuck breaching nature, which is stuck blaming the worst evil, worse than any of the hurt victims of any of the cities or any of the suburbs, tied to the same racket of fake sides. This was set up for example, courts are victim predators. They're victims of this. Well, colonization, because they don't have the word. Not only do they not have the words, because they had breached sciences, breached campuses, they're defending words other to explain us. In other words, slavery had nothing to do with the Civil War, because that leaves out the multi-front insidiousness with the North. That doesn't get away with it just because they did that move against the South. And look what we were forced to walk into. This George Washington had to counter-extort what still had him extorting in Connecticut right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Not the revolution. The revolution was not over. and it wasn't against England. This is against our shared enemy. So England's divided from itself. It was already made before England was made. It was already bigger than itself. To keep whoever's in charge of each nation of a pseudo face, like when they say Spain colonized Philippines, Manila and stuff. That was in other words, this is for a fact treatment organization, organized crime that needed then and now for Spain to be remembered as the face of what colonized Philippines and what colonized Manila and took part with the dividing of Asia. Same thing that took part of the dividing of Africa and of Native Americans from themselves in their own education. Everyone. From memory of it, and we're drawn into a relationship with zoning laws and with infrastructural means and value nature systems that only lets what colonization forced with laws that were very scary with slavery. It was all kinds of, everyone was a slave. And we still are for this. Colonization was engineered to be dissolved, to stay functional to a fact treatment nature. Organized crime. In other words, to all areas, all ages of it, distinctly together. And so, the cartoons are really no joke about the revolution. The counter-revolution. We're gonna explain. They're going to be explaining a movie they're going to make about the devil. What this is as archetypal organized crime, the characters in the cartoons. So, but it's also going to be used to show about what James Madison is really about as our first justice in the Constitutional Convention. How that is still, even though it's recorded. We have the lies he had to tell, and the theater he had to attach even to the truth he was speaking, because of forced. They didn't have free speech at the time, but they were still forced, counter-extorted, and trying to figure out who was behind what they were. James Madison, George Washington. George Washington was the first, not only the first general, but James Madison was our first justice, our founding father, with a plan that counter-extorted, that made everyone fall into a position where they didn't know who was counter-extorting them. They all had to agree that the only way they were going to survive is to go through with it, and to fight together to be play the role. But this is also set up to be to come to this when excuse me. It was a method that knew that people are going to not stay stuck that deep into crazy terror laws with slavery, with all kinds of other crazy laws. You can't build any laws against if you even found out talking about building houses outside of criminally internation monitored databases, they hurt you and your whole families. So everyone was a slave. Doesn't matter what color you are. They put that color thing in to with internation, a minority from all these different cultures. So it was dark complexion people too. Agencies, but as an organized crime that only let those agencies realize through sciences that were criminal. That were only let realized again after already standing areas. Misprision and fact treatment natures were cultivated for ulterior means. So then they were taken to this and drawn, and now drawn to as a pseudo sophistication, as a measured loss, even kinks, because now they're defending identities that are greater than their space that needs to be to keep that identity, and with inward extortion that they don't understand. each nation's leaders, the areas, motivations in the top-down formal states, motivations to stay juxtaposed, needing to tell the same finite body of misprision body of value in top-down lies with internation prison criminal enterprises, and with doctors and with their patients juxtaposed with crimes with the area. That's why you see in the news a lot the internation criminal enterprises overt and formal. They're juxtaposed drugs with the formal prescription ones, with those street contests where people get arrested for stuff like that. And so that's not because the doctors have the monetary motivations for roles with that, but they have roles tied to courts with evidence fabrication methods and with torture methods. That was with original organized crime method. They force drugs into people. They pretend they have mental illnesses. Doctors with mental illnesses. You know what I'm saying? People who forever stay incapable of ratiocination, even from admitting it. We have, this is tied to a method of crime that originally in state with what knew that live progressions would be covered up for the breaching method through has to perpetually defend misprision criminality means lies of strangers. In other words, all abridged, not real free speech, and everything worse than dictator, pretending to be democracy or voting, pretending voting means the right to play fact treatment tricks and to further progressions that have been covering that up, breaching fact treatment tricks, free speech degradation, free speech quality degradation sabotages through time, and for a method designed to stay through time. It's mine. So the important thing to understand is that there's an organized crime breaching method against fact treatment nature. So internation sciences, so culture, and this was designed to stay at nature of criminal insidiousness blamed on other. So culture can't speak for the value nature that we are, the body, the value nature system, the human body, identity, the species body's identity. Because without what is positive to that, in correlation by what is positive to male and female at the same time, what is not positive to all three at the same time, it is not positive identity has a positive relationship to itself. So it's a negative identity. And this is forced from here in immediate space nature, in temporary space nature, where forever fact treatment nature is coming through. Space is a fact treatment nature as an identity. Allah's name was revealed to teach this with English that was revealed within internation sciences. This is before the Quran. This is an identity of the sciences that has nothing to do with faith. This is science. And this is a nature, but it's in relationship to a nature of campus and a relationship to nature of internation sciences that was before their criminal re-engineering. So once they were and before they were criminal before the application of their criminal re-engineering to modern nations were first cultivated to roles with internation organized crimes, and then the criminal re-engineering of the internation sciences nature of relationship to the nations was denatured, but while it was kept functional, and then it just took over. So people who were criminally in relationship to a method before the sciences. This is now the sciences. Now they're going to make the police, the agencies, and all that and stuff. So the sophistication they made was through criminal sciences, but it was through criminality with areas first. And this was knowing that it was going to stay fake sides, and be able to blame it, keep each leadership only let justify roles reliant upon natures of logic that have to cover live aggressions and blame it on other. And that's the only nature realized of leadership. So that's how we had states with roles that were then and that were still. So no, slavery, when you say slavery, it was about the North and South differences. That's a criminal, as a criminal, realizing it or not. I'm not even a lawyer. That's as a criminal insidiousness nature role, as a victim predator. Because then you're not saying what it is, which was a breaching role. In other words, there were four realized stood up as fact treatment natures. They need to talk anyways. Free speech is not the right to make a sound. Free speech means right not to obstruct the sounds of others, especially when they need to make a complaint about the law to defend themselves and others, especially when the others are fact treatment natures of all ages exploited at the same time and distinctly, and both of those with everyone incapable of honesty and of defending that, and while they're defending ulterior, force glorified. That's a breaching role. That's a breaching role. When you see KKK, that's for a fact treatment nature role that has a fake pretended patriotism, and because of what was entrenched here since before the founding of our nation. George Washington wanted this understood. See, these are traitors to our country that are pretending they're patriots, and that they're pretending prejudice, but not just, but they're also doing this in relationship to medical corruption tied to courts, with originally state breach statutes, told not to speak medical information, anticipating that with natures of jobs with it, and originally in state areas criminally influenced, needing to cover life aggressions, cultivated from a base, propagated for only realized as victim predator roles with it, and by fact treatments, and then needing to cover that up, and needing to be able to anticipate getting away with it. In other words, in relationship to all that, really with our hospitals and with our jails, doctors, and with their police and with their ties to the areas. So they're juxtaposed with the gangs and with our schools. So it's, all kinds of natures, and with this is with area stewards, and with states top-down stewards juxtaposed needing to cover the same life progressions together, but not all not at all legitimately ever since before our nation's founding, per what had George Washington still counter-extorted that him and the French general had to meet in Harvard and Wethersfield right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War to counter it. So I'm running out of time. Thank you. Goodbye. Good night, YouTube and world. And there's still some sexual predators with Highcrest School and with Facebook and with the police since before the ones that that would have been prevented, that I tried to report before that they attached me to fake conversation, because there's still more further police and police forums and doctors recorded but still active online, in area crimes, and against kids, and against all ages of fact treatment nature. I figured this out by following what is only true and only what always and only in all contexts, and noting the exceptions at the same time. We're going to learn ratiocination. This is also a crime that makes groupthinks worse than groupthinks in relationship to a database relationship that nobody realizes in relationship to our ages of fact treatment nature, where everyone's a victim. In the context where we're all a victim, this is what we're missing. And there's also tied to a pattern where they direct people to say nothing, or have one person say something, one person say nothing, or they have threats, so the person's going to say nothing, and then they attach them to a completely faked conversation for down the road. Like there was a number of kids in the past that grew up with relationship to police forms in my area with natures of child abuse, and with other natures of crime juxtaposed with it, police forms recorded with this. But see, it's also interbranch, and with prison cliques, and with doctors tied to that, and jury tampering and everything. With shadows, because no one responds. Police block police reports, because they also have recorded roles with sustained, unbelievable abuses of all ages of fact treatment nature recorded. Then they quote the name of police equipment, and then they put me in quotes out of sequence, and that I never said, to pretending to hide what I was trying to complain about. While other people tried to complain about reported through time, and how they're pretending we have the only that realized predatory litigation nature. We never had, and no one ever heard legal nature's truth. Connecticut CT is cherry tree. There are proofs of this, not only because of what was extorting George Washington. They had a counter-extort here with the French general right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Not just because even after the Constitutional Convention, our founders didn't have free speech. They still had to hide all that was with that, and how they were going to defend it, and from what? Because why they didn't have free speech, and what lies were being told, what theater was being forced, and why, and for what. That was for long-term breaching means. By what? By our fact treatment nature. Per method by to the areas, then through the internation sciences. So through internation criminally influenced sciences with all areas, and then top down. So fake sophistication, and then needing to tell the same lies as bottom up. Ulterior value nature system forced, entertained, and not just like if they say the problems, the drugs and stuff like that. The problem is interbranch and military and internation police, homeland exploitations. Also, in other words, of people with the same natures involved with it through time with Wethersfield, with the drug dealing on all sides of the school, and with class placements in conjunction with that, and with methods that has that tied to sequence shifts, and then people into passion crimes needed with that, because when you're trying to hide that you shift you from recorded proofs, that you tell lies and switch sequence to do that. In other words, attach someone to places in conversations that weren't real at all. In other words, not just we're worse, so it's worse than that. But that also has to pretend emotions and passions when the person's trying to talk about it. And they can't do it directly and talk about what's recorded. So what they do is have people tied to them pretend they know you. And they did this through time with crimes leading up to the cultivated roles with our homeland stewards, with our military, needed to tell the same finite, misprision, and top-down lies with the internation, new criminal enterprises and the old ones. And how they were juxtaposed was what keeps our courts juxtaposed with live progression cover-up needs tied to each age of fact-cheating nature, which this also is recorded tied to Sandy Hook. And to prove that there was this criminality with that, tied to the passions out of sequence, needing the criminal nature of the FBI needed to pretend it even proper to entertain the base fact-cheating natures, where they would try to treat those. In other words, they're using, they know, they're recorded, aware that they're using the right to lie to invest people, invest police forms and people, all kinds of natures tied to this, into branch, telling lies about their own family members to people, attaching people to fake locations with databases in relationship to natures of crime with health care. Everyone's missed. Sooner or later we're all going to need health care. And too long they've been incapable, even the regular health care, especially the ones most closely juxtaposed with psychologists, with the hospitals, not just with Hartford Hospital, recorded to others before this too. I was never there in these people, but 3 times in the process of trying to report recorded crimes against kids, and with detectives associated with my area with this, with other police forms through time, and with other all kinds of people attached to the same house, like fire department, EMS. And there were crimes with their own Facebook tied to the ones with the schools. There's so many fools. So we're going to need federal stewardships, and we're going to need someone with honesty who can take over the Facebook, because they're using the Facebook to facilitate a nature of crime that made these predators, makes victim predators victim, hurt others, to hurt her, So we have to overcome this, and we have to do it with